Assalamu alaikum, dear students. This lecture is about ancient China, and this video is for those who have already studied ancient China, who already know about ancient China. They know about the aspects of their geography, their settlement, their dynasties, but just want to conclude all the points, summarize all the points. I have made this file for your ease, as well as there are questions at the end of this file, which will give you the answer outline and what kind of questions will come. Now, the points that I will be sharing today, your preparation is not limited to these points. Make sure that you go through your book and other resource as well. But these points can help you save time, and it will be easy for you to summarize everything in short time. So, starting with ancient China, first of all, you should know that what we are referring to as ancient China, what does that mean? And the few key terms about it. Just like introduction of anything, ancient Chinese civilization it began in 2205 before Christ. Now the thing here is that in different internet sources in your book, it can differ. So you always must follow your book. Whatever the book says, the timeline, the data that your book shares, you must go with that. Then there are the two river which are basically associated with that, Yangtze River and Yellow River, and this civilization was associated with that. As we are already familiar of this thing, that every civilization always needed a river to flourish on, because without the river it was not possible to make the settlement in that area. So river is one of the very important points. Talking about the generalized, since we are doing introduction to philosophy, study of fundamental truth regarding knowledge and existence, society was organized, groups sharing culture, beliefs, and values. Innovations, some of the innovations are the compass, paper, and crossbows. And they also had the system of having the emperor to a social society where they had the classes in the society. So scholars and peasants were traditionally valued more highly than artisans and merchants, which we see later on in the later dynasties, since they grew from their history. Now, geography and early settlement. So geography is really important when we talk about the civilization, because that determines that where the civilization was living, why the innovations that they do are directly associated with the geography, because geography tells you about the land. So to get to know the nature of the people, their living style, how they used to interact, geography is one of the important factors. So first of all, if we look at the ancient China, you can look at the map in your snapshots. Natural barrier in the north, there was a Gobi Desert and Mongolian plains. Then in the east, there is Pacific Ocean, jungle. In the south, there are jungle of Vietnam, Burma, and Thailand. And in the west, they were basically bounded by the Tibetan plateau, which is very cold. So early agriculture began in the Yangtze and Yellow River due to fresh water and temperate. Temperate means the normal climate, 60 degrees. Evidence suggests that farming began in the 4500 before Christ. Before that, they did not have the concept of the farming. Now, talking about the dynasty, so you must know what a dynasty is. Dynasty is a succession of rulers when they are from the same family. Then, in your book, you will start discussing from the Shang dynasty, but there are also evidences that there used to be Shah dynasty before that. So, a lot of archaeologists have found the evidence about that. You can skip that or add that to increase your word count. It's totally up to you. Most important is the Shang dynasty. They are famous for the bronze because they were able to use the bronze. They are famous for using the oracle bones and ancestral worship. These are all the associated things. We're going to get to know about it in detail later on, but this is one of the format that you can use to express the dynasty. So it can be one of the idea. Then the Zhou dynasty, it was the longest dynasty. This was the dynasty which introduced the mandate of heaven. They had a feudal system, means they owned the land. The rich people owned the land. The poor people used to work on it, and then they would earn the money and give to the lords. And then the lords would pay them back or sometimes make them slave. Then we had the Warring State period, which is very important in ancient China because that was the time when seven states of the China, such as the Qin, Zhou, Shi, all these dynasties were fighting with each other. And then the Qin dynasty, one of the emperor, which was the smallest dynasty of that time, but the emperor, the vision was so strong that he united all those states, won the war, and basically made the Qin Empire. Then we had the Qin dynasty. In this time, first unification of China happened, and Great Wall and Terracotta Army, which is associated with that, was built in that time. Then we have Han dynasty, and this was the golden age of the ancient China. The most of the inventions, the impact that we have on the world because of the ancient China is all from this time that we've got. So yeah, this is the time that was the table. Now talking about each dynasty, the Shang dynasty and archaeology. Archaeological finds show us that the ancient city Anyang at the ancient China, it gives us two evidence about the Shang people, Shang bronze and oracle bronze. Now, Shang bronze, highly sophisticated vessel used for rituals and ancestral worship, their unique casting techniques. Then they also made a lot of weapons and things associated with bronze. They were able to use that. That's why it's called the Shang bronze. First thing first, then oracle bones. They use the cattle bones or shells for the divine purposes, for fortune telling. So the process was that the question were carved on the bones, which were then heated until they cracked. And the significance of it was that inscriptions they corroborate, they give there would show some pattern, and those who claim to be the reader of that would tell them that this is how your fortune is divine decided. So that's how they use the oracle bones, a very very important point. Then the Zhou dynasty and the mandate of heaven. The Zhou dynasty defeated the Shang at a great battle. This happened in 1100 22 before Christ, and King Wu was the one who fought it and basically led to it. They used to think that Shang are the evil people. So, mandate of heaven, first of all, what is that? The belief that heaven granted the right to rule. Rulers had to be virtuous, that was their mindset, and they used to think that Shang are the evil people. Sign of losing the mandate, natural disaster, flood, or corruption would happen if the king does not have the mandate of heaven, mean the approval of the god. So this is what they introduced. Then feudal system, a social organization where the king gave the land, the fief to nobles who were the vassals of the time in exchange for military services and labor. And this feudal system we are later going to see in medieval Europe as well. So they had this feudal system in which the king would give the land to the nobles, and the nobles will make the poor work on it, mean the peasants, and then they would in return give the sometimes wages to the people, and the king would give the since he has already given the land, so he will take the military services, and peasants would get the labor work. So all these things includes in the feudal system. That was also in the Zhou, that was practiced in the Zhou time period. Then talking about the Shi Huangdi, the first emperor who basically made the Qin dynasty. So he basically was called Shi Huangdi, first sovereign emperor. His major reforms are following. He centralized administration. He appointed independent governors instead of family members to prevent civil war. He thought, if I will appoint my family, they're going to fight with each other. So rather than that, let's appoint some independent people. Weakening nobles. He introduced the concept of premortgagure, in which the eldest, so in the older times, the eldest son of the family would get all the land, all the money that the father used to own. So he abolished that system, removed that system, and he divided the power to all the heirs of any particular person, so that their power and their wealth is shrinked, and they are never able to rebel against the king with, with their power. Okay. Then the weakening nobles, standardization, sorry. He introduced now, since he was owning the seven states of the ancient China, every state had its own language, tax system, currency. So he standardized everything and introduced one. He introduced a circular coin with a square hole in it, so that it is the one thing that will be used everywhere. Then he also had the concept of legalism. So now his mindset or the legal system that he followed was the legalism, a harsh but equitable legal system called the Code of Qin. Legacy known, okay, then he left the, now we are going to discuss this legalism in detail afterwards. Then legacy known for terracotta army in his tomb near Shan and the construction of the Great Wall. This is what he left. Then officially talking about the Qin dynasty, the dynasty that he made. The first thing was unification. Then the Great Wall. He basically made he joined the small walls and made a big Great Wall. Then he did the standardization for writing, weight and measures, and currency. One script for all of China, one kind of language, essential for trade and taxes and currency. The circular Banliang coin with the square hole in the center. So this was the currency used there. Now, legalism was the concept that I told you that we will discuss it, which believes people were naturally selfish and needed strict laws and punishment to remain orderly. So this was the theory, the mindset that was in his thought. He thought that we should give people, since they are selfish, so we should have strict laws, harsh punishment for them to keep them in order. Then the Han Dynasty. The Han Dynasty is considered as the golden age because it was so influential that even today the largest ethnic group in China call itself the Han people. So the emperor was the Liu Bang, the first Han emperor who defeated his rivals after the Qin collapse. So when the Qin dynasty started to collapse, then after that he was the one who took over the power and started the Han dynasty. Now the important point of that are the Imperial Academy established by King Budi in 124 before Christ to train scholars for government services. The Silk Road is one of the important aspects because the trade expanded significantly connecting China to the west. The historical records show that Sima Shan completed the Shiji, the first comprehensive history of China, which covered over 2000 years of event. The Han Dynasty, now let's have a look at the social system, that what was the social system and how they were living in that. So Han society was divided into four main classes, and they were called the four occupations, the emperor and the aristocracy. At the absolute top of pyramid was emperor. Below him there were kings and nobles, who were often relatives of the imperial family or high-ranking officials. Then we had they lived in luxury, held large estates, and were the only one with significant political power. Then on second there were scholars and government officials called the Shi. The Han period saw the rise of the scholar official because the Han government was run at meritocracy, meaning in which one person have the high status after passing the exam according to their religious concept, Confucianism, and then on the basis of that they would come on merit and have the power. This class was highly respected because they provided the knowledge and administration. Then the third class was peasants and farmers, non. In a surprising twist for modern readers, peasants held a higher social status than wealthy merchants. I mean, they were the class above than the merchants and the artisans. They were seen as the productive backbone of society because they produced the food and paid the tax. So they were considered very important. While they had high status, their lives were incredibly difficult. They faced heavy taxes, forced labor, and they with the constant threat of famine when they have the lack of the food. That was basically the ground realities of how their life was, and yeah, but they were respected in society. Then the fourth is the artisans and craftsmen called the gong. Artisans were skilled workers who produced tool, weapon, and luxury goods like silk and pottery. They were respected for their skill, but they did not own land or produce food. They were ranked below the farmers. And then last one was the merchants, Shang, evil. At the very bottom of the social ladder were the merchants. Despite some being incredibly wealthy, they were looked down upon by the government and scholars. Why? Because Confucian philosophy viewed them as parasitic. They didn't think anything on their own. They were profited from the work of others, so they used to think they're bad people. The government often restricted them from wearing silk or holding government offices to keep them in their place. Now, the people outside the class system. So there were also people who were not in any of the social class. They were considered the outcast people. There were the military, the soldiers, who were seen as a mix of necessity and disdain, unless one was a high-ranking general. Being a soldier was not a high-status career, and they were not even included in the social society. And slaves as well. They existed in Han China, and but they made up a very small percentage. In ancient Rome and Greece, there were more slaves, but in ancient China, they were rather a smaller amount. Okay, now talking about the major inventions, there is paper. It was invented during the Han time period. It replaced heavy silk or bamboo for writing, making record keeping easier. The compass originally used for the divine purposes, and later it was used for the navigation. So the primary purpose was the divine purposes. The crossbows, a powerful weapon that allowed the soldiers to shoot with one force and accuracy than a traditional bow. Silk first produced around 2700 before Christ, became China's most valuable export. Iron weapons developed during the Zhou dynasty, replacing softer bronze. Because bronze was soft, so they replaced it with iron, and later on they had the iron. Then, seismoscope, an early device used to detect the direction of the earthquake. That was also a very simple, a very easy. Seismo is something which which can uh, detect the waves. So they also made this early detection device for the prediction of the earthquake. That was also made in the Han Dynasty. Now, the few information that you must know, because the question can come from these things, even though these are not directly discussed in your book, but these are important school of thoughts that you must know their philosophy, their system, their beliefs. So we are going to have a look at this. Philosophy and belief system. The hundred schools of thought emerged mostly during the late Zhou and Warring State period. Now, these are few of the important things that we all must be aware of. Confucianism, founded by Confucius, who was a person, he stresses love, learning, devotion to family, mean the respect of the others. Filial piety, which is the respect of the others, peace and justice. Taoism, a philosophy of living honestly and in harmony with the natural course of event. Taoism was the philosophy. So means the nature decides the best for you, so you must follow, or you must be optimistic for what life what God has decided for you. Legalism, a code that advocates for a government official to be strict and harsh laws to maintain order, which was favored by the Emperor Huang and the mandate of heaven. The belief that heaven chose the ruler. If the king was corrupt or natural disaster occur, it was a sign that mandate was lost in justifying a rebellion, that you should rebel against this king because the God is not approving of this king. Now let's have a look at some of the sample question with answer outline. Now this answer outline tells you that what are the points that you can discuss. It doesn't mean that you have to give the one word answer, but it only means that what kind of question can be asked and how you have to basically answer them. Identify the two major rivers where ancient China early civilization began. So you can discuss first the first river and then the second one. Then look at the question number 4. Explain the process and purpose of using oracle bones during the Shang dynasty. So you can divide it into three headings: the material, what was used for that, the ritual, what was the ritual, and what was the interpretation that was done on the basis of that. Then there's a question, summarize the primary goal of Code of Chin legal system. A question like this could be asked. So since you must be thinking, oh, I've not studied this in detail, I can't attempt it, you can. You can first start writing about Emperor Shi Huangdi. Then he was the one who introduced it. Then you can write about the legalism, which was one of the political philosophy. That harsh but equitable laws for the people, harsh punishment, thinking human nature was selfish, and then give the objective, and then you can also add the results. So all these things you can add to give your answer, and you can have enough information. Then looking at question number 8, I'm just reading few of them so that it does not get lengthy, and then you can read the whole file because I will be sharing it with you. How did Sri Huandi's standardization of currency and language help unite a divided China? So the answer would be you can give two aspects, economical integration and bureaucratic efficiency. So you can tell that economically this was good for them because easier trade would happen, that would earn a lot of money, and it would also reduce the corruption and related things. So it was helpful to maintain a check and balance. So all these things can be mentioned. And then bureaucratic efficiency, one script allowed the central government to communicate with all provinces. So that was also helpful, that he was able to send his messages throughout the empire to keep an order in the empire and to be able to communicate with everyone. Then we have one of this question, compare the contrast the Western Zhou period with the Warring State period. In that you can show 3 points. Stability, that how, why this war began, because there was an internal instability between them, and the people had two type of concepts. Some people were feudal loyal, mean they were loyal to the emperor. Some were not loyal to them and wanted to change the emperor. So power shift was happened in that time, and what were the innovations that resulted due to that war. So you can discuss all these points. And now I'm going to discuss the last question. Design a hypothetical social structure for a new empire using elements from both legalism and Confucianism. If question like this can be asked, in which you have to design something or tell something, then in that you can make some flow chart, and then you can talk about first of all the legalist element of the of that political system, that what legalism contains, and what kind of things were introduced in that, like strict clear laws for military and administration. Then you can give the Confucian elements like education, family based, respect, love, and all the related things. And then you can do the synthesis of a newly based system, or you can make a social structure in which you can add your ideas into it. You can give a based bureaucracy, and then you can give the standardized in style systems, but with the incorporation of you can take some points from both and make the system of your own. So these all things can be done if you do enough reading, if you have enough understanding of the concept, and if you go through things again and again. I would highly appreciate if you practice all the points, go through these points. First, do the reading from the book, go through the questions, and then go through this file. And I am sure, I'm very hopeful that you will be able to prepare for the exam well. That was all. Thank you so much.